Here on a Thursday into the Zoom room, it's Gail Symons, right? Not Simons.
It's Symons.
Symons. Okay. I want to make sure I got that right. Gail, it's great to meet you this way.
Thank you, Jake.
Or anyway, happy to have you on the show. Loved your latest column, and that's what we're going to talk about. Let's see, where do we even begin to unpack this? Let's start with, faith. Faith, right off the beginning. Faith, when it does not necessarily pertain to religious aspects, although I think of it that way, and I kind of use that or remind myself to use that daily: faith, hope, trust in promises made, biblical promises made. For me, it is religion, but there's a whole different kind of faith practiced in Wyoming by a lot of people. Start there.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the first thing for me is that faith is internal while religion is external. And so it's not that they're disconnected. It's just kind of where the source is. So for me, faith is kind of what you're projecting, what is the basis for your foundation. And that is, it can come from religion, from the practices and the teachings and the kind of structure. But it is separate in that, in my mind, you can have faith without practicing a particular religion, and that faith is not altered in any way. And I believe it's the reason why we can have so many different religions and yet find people who practice those religions who have a similar way of interacting with the world, interacting with people. Religion, again, supports that idea of faith, but religion without faith is hollow. And it is, it gives you that ick feeling, because then it's just words, and it doesn't have some foundation to it. So they oftentimes go together, but for me, they're very separate. As to kind of how that shows up in my background, which was agriculture and community. Was in just this strength and dealing with circumstances out of your control. In fact, I'm going to take a little side note there and say one of the most incredible reads I've ever done was Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. So here was a neurologist who ended up in the concentration camps in Germany. And he wrote a book afterwards called Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about the way in which our sense of meaning comes out of the works that we do and the decisions that we make. It was an amazing book. I don't know if I read it before or after. I actually visited Dachau. I was in Europe for something completely different. I had a car I rented outside of Munich. So I drove down or over to Dachau because I felt like this was such a huge part of our history. And you go in and you can see where all of those buildings were that the prisoners were housed. There was this big building that had included some of the jail cells, and they had all of these exhibitions. It was the first time I ever really got that the Nazis went after everybody who was different. They went after gypsies and homosexuals and Jews and Catholics, everybody. But there was this hush. Like, people spoke in very quiet tones. So I walked around the grounds and took this path that was through a very beautiful garden. And it ended up where the furnaces are. And there's only a couple of furnaces there. They didn't do a lot of the extermination there. But I walked around, and it was just a very grave, like overwhelming feeling. And I got in my car to leave, and I realized that I was actually feeling positive. Like I was feeling uplifted as I was leaving. And I thought, what is that about? And what I realized is that if we could survive this, we can survive anything. If we can get past this, we can pass anything. And to me, that's kind of a summary of where my faith takes me. That no matter bad what happens, we're going to get through it. We're going to deal with it, and we're going to come out better on the other side.
A faith maybe you learn from Dad, who his faith was grounded in the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Spring's always going to follow winter. I have faith in that, even during a hailstorm, let's say.
Exactly. And my mother saw it in people. Very good people did some really bad things. But you can also count on really bad people doing some good things. But most of the time, the bad is just because people are desperate, or they don't have a foundation, so they do things that are easy. But she always felt that providing people an opportunity and giving them the space to do good things, or to recover and to be different was so Dad was nature, mother was people.
Yeah. And you know what? Both those examples of faith are so inherently Wyoming. And that's what I love. The rancher and the farmer, depending on crops, depending on the cycle, that's a faith. And this seems so rightly Wyoming. And that community faith, the community, we still believe in each other in Wyoming. That may not be true in other states, but it's super important in this state, still lives here.
Yeah. And the one of the areas that it overlaps is both with my dad and the people that preceded him and the folks now, is this idea of neighbor, which is kind of intrinsic to both. Neighbor for Dad was a verb. So, for example, there's this long fence that's between our property and the Burgess property. And we always called it the Wenzel fence. And I'm sure that Wenzel was probably the person who first had the land somewhere along it. And Dad and I were out in a ATV with a flamethrower and a big old tank of water, because you don't do one without the other. And we were going along that fence, burning down the weeds. Well, we got to the end, and we turned around, went out on the highway, went through the next gate, came along and did all burned up all the weeds on the other side of the fence, which was the neighbor's fence. Well, a couple of things. Number one, we were already out there. Why should he have to go out? It was only a matter of maybe another 45 minutes to an hour for us. But there was also this sense of the weeds don't know anything about the fence. If we burned the weeds on our side and didn't take care of them on the other side, they were just going to come right back, because they don't know the fence. And so that was, first of all, it was really enjoyable, because Dad was just a joy to be around. He didn't talk much, but he always had something interesting to say when he did. But again, that idea of neighbor and having neighbor be a verb. So taking care of one another, whether it's at the YMCA, which is where my mother worked, or it's establishing something like the food bank, or it's, the banks on a regular basis go out and pick up garbage along the rights of way. It's doing something for other folks because it's the right thing to do.
We're talking to Gail Symons. There's many reasons our listeners may be familiar with that name, familiar with her. If not, let me get you up to speed. Get on cowboystatedaily.com. Look for her latest column, her latest opinion piece, Wyoming Runs on Faith, and the Springtime Knows It. And, let me throw another book at you. You mentioned one just now, and you mentioned one in your article. Mitch Albom's 5 People You Meet in Heaven. His take on faith, again, sort of parallel to the religious idea of faith, but not religious. It's the faith and it's the hope for things unseen that you know are coming, no matter how long it takes.
Exactly. So it's that faith in the unknown, that as my sister had multiple sclerosis, and I remember once getting her for a Christmas present a little wall. It was a small wall hanging, and it said something like, "When you step off into the unknown, faith is knowing one of 2 things will happen: the ground will come up to meet your feet, or you will grow wings." And I just love that. She was actually married to an Episcopalian preacher. So, you can't ever separate completely religion from faith. But yeah, that idea that we don't know what all our actions will impact on others, which is the beauty of it. And so keep that in mind. Like when you're doing something, do it because it needs to be done, and not because you're looking necessarily for something from it, but understand that other people can be affected by the good that you put out in the world.
And you're sort of hitting on another thing you mentioned in this, which is another uniquely Wyoming characteristic of most of us. And that's the individual responsibility. You do things the right way, the cowboy way, whether you're being watched or not.
Yeah. In fact, I collect quotes. So I have another one that says, "Conscience is that little voice that tells you someone may be watching." But that's not just from a negative side, but from a positive side. The kind of ripple effect of doing something good and somebody notices it, so they do something good, and we all benefit from it.
Well,
I sound kind of like Pollyanna. I'm not. I can be pretty damn cynical, but even when or maybe even especially when bad things happen, like a hailstorm or a disease that you can't do anything about. How we address those moments are almost inevitably observed by somebody else. And so we're providing a lesson, both to ourselves in the choices that we make, but also to the other people that are around us. And so, I think one of the things that bothers me the most is when people talk religion and then act in a way that's completely at odds with that, because it actually undermines what it is that you're saying, because people will believe what they see more than what they hear. And so act accordingly.
Well, Wyoming didn't invent faith, but we sure practice it when we can, whether it's the 1800s pioneers and that kind of spirit and faith that we're going to make a state out of this territory, or whether it's the boom and bust nature of Wyoming. In hard times, faith means trusting help will come, and in the good times, it means looking for where help is needed.
Exactly.
I love the way you've written about and weave faith into Wyoming. It's super cool. You got to check it out. Gail Symons, read her latest in the Cowboy State Daily. Gail, we got to have you on more. We got to be regular.
I would love to. Thank you.
All right. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.